I yield myself such time as I may consume. First, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the congressional record a letter of support for H.R. 3684 from 113 organizations supporting the Water Quality Protection and Job Creation Act of 2021.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd also like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the congressional record a letter from Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson of the House Science, Space, Technology Committee to waive consideration of H.R. 3684 as amended, as well as my response to Ms. Johnson expressing appreciation for her willingness to work cooperatively on this legislation.
Without objection.
I thank the Chair. The Invest in America Act before us today is generational, and it is transformational in terms of what we're going to do in terms of 21st century surface transportation and water infrastructure. We're going to move past the Eisenhower era of the 1950s. During the Eisenhower era, the existential threat to the United States was invasion or attack by Russia. The National Defense Highway System was built to move military equipment to the coasts, and also it was built to evacuate our cities in times of nuclear war. Now, we have a different existential threat, which is climate change. Now, tackling climate change is a Herculean task, and some may ask, why address it in a transportation bill? In fact, we will hear that from the other side. Well, because the transportation sector is the single largest carbon emitter in the United States of America. And it would be foolish and irresponsible to continue pouring taxpayer money into the old way of thinking that we must merely expand highways. We know now that doing that creates induced demand. You add more lanes, attract more cars, before long congestion returns, and you're right back where you started, except now you have bad traffic and more carbon pollution. We, according to the Texas Transportation Institute, in the last 25 years have built 35,000 lane miles in our 100 largest cities, and the costs of congestion and delay have gone up 6 times. 6 times. So should we keep doing that? No, it's not working. There are alternatives. We have a great opportunity. The infrastructure of the Eisenhower era is crumbling, threatening safety, quality of life, economic competitiveness. In fact, some of the infrastructure we're living off, like the critical Baltimore rail tunnel, was built in 1872. It's not going to last long. It's brick and it's leaking water. And the tunnels under the Hudson are subject to failure in the not too distant future. They were built in 1908. We had great engineers at the time, but now we've become so puny, we can't do big projects like that. No, that's not the United States of America. That's not the American way. We can tackle these challenges, and we will. And climate change is part of what we have to deal with. I hear a lot from the other side. We want resilience. Resilience to what? Sea level rise? Why is the sea level rising? I don't know. Severe weather events? No, nope. Guess. But and then in my region, just this week, unprecedented heat wave, unprecedented in the history of the United States and Western Canada, by far, 40 degrees above normal. Pavement buckled and melted. Cables supplying power to transit melted. High tension lines sagged. Luckily, we've got the trees out from them. They didn't cause fires this time. We have to rebuild this infrastructure to deal with the threats of the 21st century, and this is tremendous opportunity. There's also, we have long had problems with inequality and racial injustice perpetuated by our transportation programs, policies, and funding decisions. We have a major section in this bill to right those wrongs and provide new opportunities for those communities and rejoin some of those communities, social equity. U.S. infrastructure was once the envy of the world. We're now 13th and plummeting fast. We're kind of a joke around the world. China's putting 6% of their GDP into transportation infrastructure. We're putting in 0.5%. And we're going to compete with that? And our other competitor nations in Europe are putting in 2 or 3% of their GDP. We're putting in a fraction of that. You know, we have water mains that explode, sewers that back up, bridges that collapse. You know, we have decrepit transit, $100 billion to bring it up to state of good repair that breaks down when people are trying to get to work. And we have potholes that cost every American between $560 and $1,000 a year in car repairs. And the cost of delays is $170 billion, which is way more than we are spending on investment in transportation infrastructure. China, a rising China, is threatening to take over the future of transportation in the world. We cannot let the Chinese do this yet again and steal those jobs from America. We have to move toward the future. We have General Motors, all electric in 35. The Ford electric Mustang is outselling the fossil fuel Mustang. Hey, it's faster. And, you know, I've driven a semi made by Volvo, but there's 4 manufacturers making them, 80,000-pound capable semi-tractor. Fred Smith from FedEx is going all electric. He said, but you know, there's no place to charge them. We have to meet this challenge, and part of this bill is EV challenging on the backbone of the National Highway Network. We also are going to put significant funds into safety. We're having huge problems with safety, growing deaths in pedestrian, cycling, and others. We have to promote those modes, make them safe. More people will use them. So we're making a major investment there, fossil fuel free. You know, this bill is going to focus on bringing things to a state of good repair. 47,000 bridges on the national highway system need substantial repair or replacement. Infinite number of off-system bridges. We're creating a new program for off-highway system bridges, a new program for rural bridges, a new program for the 10 most economically significant bridges in the country, including ones like Brent Spence, which is going to collapse or be closed in 8 years, connecting Kentucky and Ohio. Those things are in this bill. If we don't do this bill, then we are doomed to an even more inefficient and decrepit future. So, you know, we're going to make historic investments in transit, helping to address, as I mentioned, the $100 billion state of good repair backlog. We're closing the last loopholes in transit. We're going to get 2 Chinese companies, predatory Chinese companies out of here, making electric buses and rail. And we're going to make all that stuff in the United States of America and create one heck of a lot of jobs. And maybe we'll even export electric buses to the rest of the world. And then beyond that, you know, we're going to be a leader in the clean energy economy. That's the future. It is the future. It's the business case. It's where the corporations are going, except parts of the fossil fuel industry. Even ExxonMobil is talking about spending $100 billion on carbon capture and sequestration. Even ExxonMobil. But there are other parts of the fossil fuel industry like, no, you stick with us. Stick with fossil fuel. Don't allow them to do this electrification stuff. Don't talk about climate change. Carbon pollution doesn't do anything. No, none of that's true. And we have to deal with it. It offers opportunities, communities of all sizes, urban, suburban, rural, 50% increase for rural transit, $37 billion from surface transportation programs sub-allocated to local communities, not the biggest cities. We create several new multimodal discretionary grant programs, including the community transportation, community climate grants for local government applicants. First time in a decade, we provided bipartisan member-designated projects. 109 Republicans applied for projects. Everyone was offered $20 million under very strict guidelines agreed to by the majority and the minority. We've cleaned up that up. Some people, you know, are saying, well, this is bad, it's pork. No. Does the federal DOT or your state DOT know what you need most in your district, what your city needs, what your county needs? You know better. But sometimes they just ignore it. They're focused on the capital. They're focused on the biggest cities. They're focused on Washington, D.C. Who knows what? So we have those projects in this bill. And some have said, well, if the Republicans don't vote for it, you can strip them out. I said, no. These are meritorious projects. They've gone through a vetting process. They will stay in. This is helping local communities. Now, I also have to say that we have had issues with the disadvantaged DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, DBE, at Department of Transportation. Discrimination is still a barrier for many to get into constructing, and maintaining our surface transportation program. So I'm including for the record a more comprehensive statement about the need for this crucial program into the record, along with a list of several key studies on discrimination used to help inform the reauthorization of the DBE program. It includes an historic $95 billion in rail investment. That's about a 500% increase. We're going to begin to join city pairs so people can get off the highways. Virginia's doing a great project. Instead of putting 2 more lanes, which would be immediately congested, for $12 billion on 95, they're going to build a rail project with a new bridge over the Potomac River, partnering with CSX for half the cost and reduce congestion more and give people a better commute. We need to be looking at that model around the country. $32 billion for Amtrak. It also has money for a new program, Prime, Passenger Rail Improvement Modernization Expansion Program, $25 billion competitive grant program for states and localities to launch high-speed and intercity rail development. It tackles big rail projects that need significant investment to get off the ground. $25 billion for bridges, stations, and tunnels. I mentioned the Baltimore Tunnel earlier. Directed grant program funds bridges, stations, tunnels, projects that cost $500 million or more, which cannot just be carried by local communities. Robust safety programs I mentioned before. It also includes the first reauthorization of the Clean Water State Revolving Fund since 1987. When I was a county commissioner, we get a 75% match from the federal government to build a system that's still serving a community twice that size today. Today, if we went to the federal government for match, they'd say, sorry, we don't help you with wastewater. Wastewater does not observe city limits. It does not observe county lines. It does not observe state lines. It doesn't observe international boundaries. It's a national problem, and our communities need help. I was on a statewide call with county commissioners. 75% of them are Republicans. They're begging in these rural counties for help with wastewater and drinking water. We have to step up to the plate in that. And this is so this will be the first reauthorization in many, many years. We are going to move forward with this bill, and every part of this bill is backed by the strongest Buy America requirements and labor protections and new investments in worker training safety. I wish some of the other departments of the federal government, particularly the Pentagon, would follow our model to create more jobs in America. It's not enough just to transform it. We need to ensure investments create good-paying jobs, revitalize American manufacturing, help us compete in clean energy economy, and lead the world once again, as we were the envy of the world in the 70s and up to about the early 80s. This is a chance to reform, rebuild for the future, an opportunity to improve safety, equity, access for all Americans, an urgent call to confront the existential threat of climate change and leave a better world for future generations. Transformative bill. They'll improve mobility, economic competitiveness, quality of life in communities across the country. Infrastructure is calling, and Congress must finally answer the call. I yield back. I reserve.